Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Jake with Fitness Insider coming at you guys with another good one today. But first, as always, hit that subscribe button. I would really love to have you guys join the family. And always, I want to give out a special thanks to everybody who has been supporting the channel by, getting involved in the comment section, liking the videos, all that good stuff. You guys are awesome. I love you guys, man. I really do appreciate that. So, again, thank you so much. But we're going to get into a cool topic here, right? So, I've been hearing a lot of naysayers and whatnot, so I wanted to discuss the topic of, can Phil Heath make a successful return? And I'm talking about 2020, if by chance he puts another year off and maybe does it in 2021, we'll get into that, but it's just in general, can Phil Heath make a successful return to the bodybuilding stage? So, it's going to be a good video, definitely stick around to the end, it's going to be a fun one. Alright guys, so moving into this, there's a lot of different ways that we're going to have to quantify whether Phil can make a successful return to the stage. And to be clear, when I say a successful return, I'm talking about winning the Olympia. I'm not talking about second, third place. I'm not talking about winning some other show, even like the Arnold. Phil can win any other show pretty easily, I think. So we're talking about a 7-time Mr. Olympia winner. The only thing that would even be considered successful is if he comes back to win it like Jay Cutler did back in 2009, which was amazing. A lot of people said Jay Cutler could not do it. They thought that he was basically on the downhill, that the best was behind him. He comes back at probably his all-time best shape, maybe only rivaled by the 2001 appearance at the Olympia, but I still think 2009 with the added mass and the better back, I think that was probably the best he's ever looked. So, I mean, it is so possible. Not to mention the fact that he's not that old, guys. Phil Heath, we're talking 40 years old, right? Nowadays in bodybuilding, you can get away with not even reaching the best part of your career until your late 30s, right? So, I mean, granted, yes, back in the day, bodybuilding was a young man's game. A lot of those guys retired at a pretty young age, but as we're seeing, it's pretty usual in modern bodybuilding for guys to be at their peak in their late 30s. I mean, look at Sean Roden winning the Olympia, I believe, at 42. That's incredible. 42 or 43, I can't remember, but that's incredible. You got guys like Dexter Jackson, which I will say, he's kind of on his own on that one. There's not really anybody else doing what he's doing, but he's at 50 years old, still being in the top of any lineup. It's phenomenal. So, age is not going to be the thing that holds him back. I think you're going to have to look at his competition. Mainly that and the fact of the midsection, which we're going to get into. But if you're looking at who his biggest competition is, assuming that Sean Roden is not able to compete in 2020, I think we're looking at Brandon Curry. Big Ramy as well, but we're going to focus on Brandon Curry because he is the current Mr. Olympia, and he has proven himself as somebody that has been showing up, consistently looking good. Heck, dude, consistently looking better. Almost every show he comes in, he improves from the last. So, I mean, Brandon Curry is dangerous. Despite what a lot of people are saying about the guy, he's a phenomenal bodybuilder, and he is dangerous. So, you know what? Let's go ahead and get into that. Alright, guys. First, I do want to say, excuse me if my voice starts going out. I'm starting to lose my voice, and it's starting to get a little scratchy, so sorry about that. But also, I want to mention, the reason I'm using Brandon Curry as a comparison is because he basically is the most dangerous guy that Phil would have to go against. I mean, let's be real. I mean, Sean Roden would be, but that's under the if they clear the problems he's going through, which, I mean, it's so late in the year that, I mean, who's to say that's going to happen by September? So let's just assume that that's not going to be done by this year. So beyond that, Brandon Curry already beat Bonac 2 times in 2019, and Rolly Winkler could do it, but they're basically on par. Brandon Curry and Rolly Winkler are both pretty comparable. The only guy that is actually potentially better than Curry is Big Ramy, but Big Ramy doesn't seem to come in with enough conditioning to be able to go against these guys at that highest level, which, I mean, he could, but for now, let's just choose the current Mr. Olympia, who's been a dangerous guy in the game for the last couple years. That's why I'm using them. And they're pretty comparable. A lot of people think that Phil would blow Brandon out of the water. I don't think it's like that anymore. I think Brandon has made up so much in the last couple years. He's made so many improvements that the dude is dangerous. And we're going to see that as we go through these poses. And then we'll see how obvious of a return it would be for Phil, whether he would win or not. So, structure-wise, I think Brandon has a better structure. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he has a better body, a better physique. I'm saying his structure, the bodybuilding structure, the width, the taper, the whole present, the illusion of what you present. Brandon has a more impressive and aesthetic. Remember how important that is, especially nowadays. The last two Mr. Olympia winners have both been guys that are aesthetic. They're not the massive, crazy, muscular guys that it has been for the last decade or two. It's almost seeming like it's been a return to aesthetics. Not to say Phil isn't aesthetic, but Phil's kind of a cross between aesthetics and mass monster. Whereas somebody like Brandon and Sean, both those guys really represent aesthetics in a good way. But anyways, Brandon has a better structure, in my mind anyways. But there is a lot that Phil has that Brandon doesn't. So it is a pretty comparable matchup. So let's just take Phil at 2018, the most recent version, versus probably the best version, which was the Arnold Classic last year in 2019, where Brandon Curry beat out one of the best shapes Bonac ever brought. So to say that Brandon Curry is not an amazing bodybuilder, it blows my mind that people say that. But anyways, obviously, Phil has the advantage from the back still. Even though Brandon Curry has one of the better backs in modern bodybuilding, it's just not enough to go against Phil. Phil has a back that's rivaled only by the best ever, like Ronnie Coleman and Dorian. And Phil might even have a better full two back poses than Dorian, just based on the lower half of his body. He has better legs and glutes than Dorian did. So, and his back is just as good. And we're not talking about that. I'm sorry, I go off on tangents sometimes, but my point is that Phil has an insane back, and no matter how good Brandon's is compared to the other guys, nobody's touching Phil from the back. I mean, that's like rule number one in bodybuilding. Nobody's touching Phil from the back, at least nowadays. But what Brandon does have going for him is the freaking width and the taper. I mean, dude, Brandon's taper is better than Phil's taper here. Phil has far more detail in his legs, from the waist down. Phil's killing him. However, Brandon has made strides. I would say his hamstrings and glutes, they look good. They would stand next to a lot of people. Let's remember, guys, Bonac has a killer back double and back lat spread. Maybe not so much a back lat spread, but, Brandon looks phenomenal here. Phil just looks better. But we're going to see the main problem for Phil, which everybody knows, the stomach. The stomach, man. All right, so obviously everybody knows the story by now, why he lost in 2018. So the debate is whether it was all the midsection or if Sean truly did just bring in a better physique muscularity-wise. We all know that Phil, as far as body part by body part, he beats everybody. Everybody. But you are more than the sum of your body parts. Let me repeat that, okay? You are more than the sum of your body parts. A lot of people don't seem to understand that. Here's another thing that frustrates me. When people look at the mandatories, say, for instance, this pose right here, side tricep, so many bodybuilding channels will be like, well, Phil has the better tricep, so he wins the side tricep. That is not how these things are scored, guys. You cannot weigh in just the body part named in the pose and discount the rest of the body. I mean, for instance, a lot of people had Sean Roden winning the side tricep against Phil Heath last year. Sean Roden's triceps are nothing compared to Phil Heath. In fact, they're one of the worst on the stage. And Sean, I think, looked so good in the side tricep last year. Not because his arms, but because of everything else. So my point is, even though Phil has an insane chest, insane arms, triceps, some of the best triceps in the world, some of the best legs in the world, the illusion, the outline, the just the total package that he presents. Look at Brandon. He looks like a statue right there. Do you think that Phil would win this like a walk in the park? No, man. In fact, I would probably give it to Brandon. And a lot of people might call me crazy because of the arms and the shoulders on Phil, but dude, Brandon ain't no slouch either. Look at him, dude. His arms are incredible. Now, again, Phil has better arms, but Brandon looks better in the pose. And anybody that knows bodybuilding will know that the whole body is being judged in every pose. So, Phil needs to keep his midsection in control. If his hernia was truly what lost him the Olympia, then Phil can come back. He had his surgery at the tail end of 2018. Phil can come back and easily reclaim his throne if that truly was the cause of it. But I think, like me and a lot of other people, know that it probably is more than just the hernia that caused this. A lot of bodybuilders, as they get older, and with the amount of food they got to keep eating, distension is just a real thing that you have to deal with. And I don't know. I'm not going to claim to know what's going on. I hope the hernia was the cause of it. That way, it's done and he can come back and have a shredded midsection again. I don't know if that's the case. Either way, assuming that is fixed, Phil is not done yet. My point of showing you all these poses was to show that the current Mr. Olympia is still vulnerable to a Phil Heath that was not one of the better packages that he brought. That was the 2018 version of Phil Heath, and the current Mr. Olympia is still pretty vulnerable to that. So I also wanted to make the point to show that the current Mr. Olympia still looks phenomenal against the 7-time Mr. Olympia. So anyways, guys, my point is that Phil Heath, he's only 40 years old. He has a lot of time left to really come back and prove himself if he wants to, and take that 8 to tie, Lee Haney and Ronnie Coleman. Maybe even to get more, depending on how his body holds up. But only Phil knows what he's capable of doing. As you can see, his offseason, this big layoff that he's had, it's probably done well for his body. In his Instagram, he looks phenomenal. I would love to see him return. Phil is one of my favorite bodybuilders, man. He's a phenomenal bodybuilder. Anybody that if you can't recognize that Phil is one of the GOATs, that you just have a bias. I mean, he is an insane bodybuilder, and I would love to see these two stand next to each other. And that's not to mention, we're going to have people like Flex Lewis coming back, possibly Sean Roden coming back. Big Ramy skipped last year, so Big Ramy will probably be back this year. Rolly Winkler might come in like he did in 2018. Who knows what's going to happen? It could really be an amazing Olympia, or it could be another lackluster. With everything going on in the world right now, we might not even have a Mr. Olympia. So we're just going to have to wait and see. I really hope that we do. But either way, guys, it's been a long video. I'm going to go ahead and close this out. My throat is really bothering me. So to everybody that stuck around, I really appreciate it. I'm really just looking for ideas to cover different topics for you guys, since, normally this is going to do a lot of, this channel is going to be doing a lot of news surrounding bodybuilding competitions. That's not going on right now, so I'm really just trying to find topics to keep you guys entertained. So if you have anything, I will do my best to try to keep that into consideration. But anyways, guys, again, thank you. I will see you on the next one.